Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. In this video today, reacted to 10 plus incredible facts about Swedish Air Force. I've been doing a lot of reacting to Swedish fighter jets, so this video makes a lot of sense to react to, so let's get right into it for today. Let's go, my friends.
Sweden, we all know, is a pretty neutral kind of country. It's one that doesn't really start a lot of fights. But did you know that it had an army and an air force? Yeah, for some people that might shock them, but for others, you guys might already know.
What? Doesn't every country have like an army and an air force? I mean, there's probably like a few small ones without it, but like pretty much every big country has an army and air force, right? I may be wrong. If I'm wrong, let me know in the comments below.
That. And that's the theme of this video, guys. We're going to look at the Swedish Air Force and find out a little bit about its history, its size, and how many pilots have done the Mile High Club. Oh yeah. Okay, I'm kidding. We're not going to talk about the Mile High Club. We're just going to talk about the Air Force and its history and that stuff. So let's get rolling. By the way, guys, my name is Dave Wappel. Welcome to FTD Facts, the channel where I look at people, cultures, and places from all around the world. And I'm excited to learn about the Air Force of Sweden. I like history and all that sort of stuff, but what's more exciting about this is a regular part of our Swedish military playlists, which if you guys want to check it out, it's going to be in the description box below or at the end of the video, or I'm going to mention it in a couple of cards throughout it, so you can check it out at any time. So to give you a bit of a backstory when it comes to the Air Force, we all know that Sweden is very, very neutral. It's one of those countries that just doesn't want to pick fights with people. As a matter of fact, Sweden has been neutral for quite a long time. It hasn't officially declared any military engagements since 1814. However, truth be told, that does not mean that Sweden doesn't know how to defend itself. As a matter of fact, it's quite impressive when it comes to its air force. Because although Sweden hasn't declared any military engagements, it has been a part of the Congo crisis, the Bosnian War, the war in Afghanistan, the Libyan Civil War, some engagements throughout World War II, and currently the Mali crisis. And of course, before I get into talking about that, including something like World War II, which I know some of you guys are like, how did Sweden manage to stay out of the fight in World War II? Well, it kind of actually didn't. I'm going to get into that in terms of Air Force in a little bit. But before we do any of that...
Okay, learn about World War II is always super interesting, so I'm kind of interested to see that part especially. So let's continue on with the video.
We got to go all the way back to the past. And we got to go before 1926 when the Air Force was officially formed. We're going way back before that. Okay, so we don't need to go all the way back to 1893 when Augustus Solomon Andre made the first balloon flight over Stockholm. No, we ain't going that far back. However, we do have to mention a man named Carl Cederstorm, who was the first Swedish man to get his pilot's certificate in France. And this happened in 1910, and of course, only about a year later, that was when Sweden got its first military aircraft. Of course, it really didn't have any guns on it, but the thing was, it was meant for the military. As a matter of fact, it was meant for the Navy. And this plane was a Blériot 11, which was from 1909, and as a matter of fact, it was made by Ask and Nyrup, which actually was the first company to be contracted.
Wow, that's so cool. Like, look at how the old planes look, and somehow they managed to make them fly. Truly a miraculous invention, man. That's so impressive.
Made by Ask and Nyrup, which actually was the first company to be contracted by Sweden for military aircraft. Oddly enough, for the use of this plane, the agreement was that they had to send a man named Lieutenant Old Dahlback to aviation school in England.
Oh, okay.
Thank God this guy actually decided to do it, because he went over to England, used his own money, trained in the program, and then in December of 1911, Sweden got its first military plane. Also, I should mention that these Blériot planes, they were actually, unfortunately, very short term. They were only used until about 1916, and then they said, oh crap, we need better ones, because these ones, they ain't that good. Now, when we look at the history of Sweden's aviation in terms of military, one thing that is a little bit of a confusion is the fact that there was an aviation group within the Army, and there was an aviation group in the Navy as well. In which, because of that, in the early days of Sweden's aviation history, there was, planes and balloons, I should say, because balloons were part of the aviation corps. They were part of either the Army or they were part of the Navy. It was rather confusing.
Okay, so balloons were part of the aviation corps. I kind of would like him to go a bit more in depth with that, because I'm kind of curious to see how that kind of worked. I mean, did they put bombs in it? Did they use it to fly to different locations? Because I imagine if you're in a balloon, or was it used to transport stuff? Because if you're in it, I imagine you'd be like a sitting target, of course.
Confusing.
But
as a matter of fact, when it comes to balloons, although they're not really part of jets, but they do make up the first aviation of Sweden, They were used until about 1936 when the last balloon flight ever took place for the military. Yeah, that's right, you got balloons. Now we just use them for birthdays. Or that weird dinner party that you do. Have you guys ever done one of those? Where you go in the dinner party and go up in the balloon? I think that would suck.
I've never done that. I've never been in the hot air
balloon
balloon before, actually.
Now, for planes, by the year of 1913, they established what is known as the Marinens Flygvapnet, or the Special Aviation Corps. As well, within that same year, the first naval training school for aviation was built, and that aviation school operated out of the fortress known as Oscar Fredericksborg. And for that, let's move a little bit forward and let's look at World War I. Did they participate? Did they not? Well, that's an interesting question. Truth be told, a lot of planes during the First World War in Sweden were classified as reconnaissance planes, and it's also been said that most, if not all, the planes were not armed during the First World War. However, obviously the war ended and things changed shortly after that. Because it was on July 1st, 1926 that Sweden birthed its very own Air Force. And this was because what they did was they merged the naval and the Army Air Force units, or the aviation units, into one big unit, making it no longer confusing. It was great. But of course, right around the corner, we had World War II. It was a big one. Contrary to what most people believe, Sweden during that time had actually over 800 pieces of aircraft and approximately 15 fighter wings. They also say that throughout the entire war, there was approximately 250 pilots that were killed in incidents that might have revolved around combat of some
sort. Rest in peace to all those
pilots.
I
can't really forget about this because this was really important, because during the Second World War, a lot of pilots that were part of the Air Force volunteered to help Finland. They took part in the Continuation War, the Lapland War, and the Winter War. I felt like Finland had like a million wars going on in a very short amount of time. And of course, the group for this was the very famous group known as the F-19. But of course, after the war had ended, because the United States and all of Europe had a problem with Russia, Sweden became a very, very important country. And as a matter of fact, in 1946, Sweden had a major push to modernize its air force because the Cold War was coming around the corner, and yeah, Russia was a bit of a threat. With that, the Air Force received a lot of different aircraft from different countries around the world. But, for example, one of the more modernized planes was the P-51 Mustang and the J-28A de Havilland Vampire, which was the first jet fighter to ever be introduced into Sweden, especially in the terms of a military jet plane.
Okay, so there's a lot of history there. I mean, they've been through loads of different evolutions of planes, balloons, jets, so you can clearly see, man, just the evolution is crazy of where they are now.
And throughout history, they say that Sweden possessed about 70 of these individual aircraft. However, unfortunately for these fighters, they were still behind in the technology, as during the 1950s, technology was growing fast. However, in 1951, things changed as the Air Force received the SAAB-29 Tunen. And this was the first ever Swedish-made plane that was made by a Swedish company for the Swedish Air Force.
I mean, yeah, I've done quite a few reactions to Saab and about their fighter jets, their planes, and they're an extremely impressive company, and the stuff they've built has been amazing. Like, just very, like, technological advancement. It's kind of crazy to see what they've done.
That could theoretically compete with the rest of the planes around the world. As a matter of fact, these were so popular that they had 661 of these aircrafts in total, and they had quite a long service, being retired in 1976. Also, by the way, here's an amazing fact that I did not know. In 1957, Sweden had the 4th largest air force out of any country in the entire world.
Okay, that's extremely impressive.
I was
in the
blown
entire
away by that
world,
fact.
especially
like,
considering the population
Sweden
size.
I mean, it's got a smaller population than America and Russia, and even India, and I think even Britain. I'm not too sure, but I'm like, what? That's crazy.
Yeah, that's what surprised me. Due to the population, I remember finding out the difference between population of the United Kingdom and even Sweden. But their Air Force at one point was the 4th largest in the world. That's very surprising.
Which makes you kind of wonder a little bit, what happened to all the Air Force that it once had? Well, I mean, obviously the Cold War's gone, so, you know, you don't need as many planes. But with that in mind, during the Cold War, there was one really interesting incident. This was known as the Catalina Affair, in which the Swedish Douglas DC-3, known as TP-79, lost contact over the area of Gotska Sandön. This happened in June of 1952, and it was only a few days later when Sweden launched a Catalina aircraft to go looking for the missing Douglas DC-3. Of course, that Catalina was also shot down by Russian Air Force. However, luckily for the crew of the Catalina, they managed to get out of the plane and make it into West Germany. However, truth of what really happened did not come to light until 1990, when it was said that the TP-79 Douglas was spying on Russia, and Russia gave the command to shoot it down.
Oh.
Also, a little FYI, in 2004, they did find and raise the wreck. On top of that, the pilots were recovered and their bodies were identified. However, let's go back to the 1950s because we got to talk more about the Cold War. Because during that time, Sweden had introduced what is known as the BAS-60 air-base system and the road runway system where planes could land and take off quickly if need be. The base, or the BAS or BAS-60 system, evolved into what is known as the BAS-90 system. A little bit of information on this: they had dozens of air bases throughout the country. They were small and large. However, nowadays, because the Cold War has come to an end, these bases no longer exist, and some of them were actually sold to private owners. Also, it was said throughout the entire Cold War, Sweden had lost approximately 600 pilots in total. And of course, in 1961, 1964, this isn't really a bad thing, but Sweden also lended a hand in the Congo crisis. As for aircraft, I do want to mention some really remarkable pieces of technology that were from this era. For example, the SAA-B-35 Dragon.
I mean, I don't really know much about the Congo crisis, so that's something I also need to educate myself on.
Dragon was a major fighter, being capable of going really high altitudes, and was even capable of holding its own in a firefight. And as a matter of fact, this thing was so impressive that it stayed in service from 1959 to 1999.
Wow, that's a big
that's
difference.
Quite a lot for
a
one
long
fighter.
time.
As well, they also had their workhorse fighter known as the SAAB.
The fact that it was good enough for 40 years, and those are like the technological advancements during those years, I feel were like extremely pivotal. So the fact that it was that good for that long, that makes it even more impressive to me.
E-37 Viggen, which lasted from 1979 to 2004. Also, after the Cold War came to an end in 1992, Sweden invested in a new aircraft for its Air Force, and that was the SAAB-39 Gripen. And
yeah, I've done a reaction to that. Extremely
impressive. And of course,
impressive.
because the Cold War is gone, a lot of things have been reduced. To give you an idea of how much it has, in 1995, they had over 400 pieces of aircraft. In today's world, it's like under 150. That's right, or at least in 2005, it was reported they have under 150. And in today's world, to give you an idea of what they do have, they approximately have 72 fighters, in which they are all the SAAB JAS-39 Gripen. They have one early warning control aircraft, which is an AWAC, and that is two of them, which are the SAAB-340s. Of course, they have one tanker, which is a Hercules-class aircraft. On top of that, they have two reconnaissance, which are the Gulfstream 4s. 9 different transports, 5 of them are Hercules, and 2 of them are the Boeing C-17s. These are the largest of the aircrafts that they have that are classified as transports, by the way. Helicopters, though, they don't really have any attack helicopters. They do have utility helicopters, though, and quite a bit. These come in at 52, which are a combination of light and heavy utility. Their Blackhawks and NH-90s, though, can be mounted with machine guns and stuff like that that can have some form of combat. As for trainers, they do have 71 of these. 23 of them are the Gripens as well. And of course, they have 5 major Air Force bases, in which for the fighters, they are located in the Skaraborg Air Force Base, the Bleakling Air Force Base, and the Norrbotten Air Force Base. As for the size of how many people are in the Air Force, it's really unknown, but all of these are under the command of Major General Mats Helgeson. Also, I just forgot to mention that when it comes to their technology within the Air Force, a lot of their aircraft is going through a major modernization program. The Gripens are getting upgraded, and on top of that, they are looking into getting unmanned vehicles as well. So there you have it, guys. That is me looking at the Air Force of Sweden. Before you guys get out of here and go crazy onto other videos, if you guys want to learn more about just military forces of Sweden, I don't know why I just did that. It just made sense. I guess I was going to say what I've done is you can click this card right here. I've put everything into a nice little playlist for you guys. So we've talked about special forces. I've talked about the army, I think. But a bunch of different videos that are just about different units.
Okay, I might have to check those out.
So you military buffs from Sweden, you'll want to check this out and look at our videos within that playlist. Other than that, guys, it's also in the description box below, and it'll be at the end of the video. But, yo, feel free to subscribe to the channel if you guys are liking what we're doing. And on top of that, just leave a comment or a suggestion for a future FTD Facts video down there in the comment section box. But other than that...
Okay, so that video is very interesting. I mean, I've done a reaction to the Jazz 39 Gripen, and that's like an extremely impressive piece of technology. And it's kind of cool just to see the evolution. I mean, they started out with that really old plane, and the fact that that could fly is kind of just mind-blowing. And then they obviously went to the balloons, and using balloons during the war, I kind of would like to learn a bit more about that. I imagine it's for like supplies and stuff like that, but I don't think it was like a method of transport, was it? If it was, I would like to kind of know more about that, because I imagine if you're traveling by balloon, you're kind of like a sitting duck. You're just like in the sky, you could easily be taken down. But yeah, to see the evolution of the Swedish Air Force is definitely very impressive, and the fact that they were the 4th largest in the world at one point is kind of crazy based on the population size. So if you guys want more reaction videos of Sweden and stuff like that, I kind of like learning more stuff about this, because I don't really know much about the Air Force, the fighter jets, and I found it very interesting because like the technology that goes into it is kind of mind-blowing. So if you guys want more reaction videos like this, drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a great day, everyone.